Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Hannah Delpiez. I'm one of the dietitians at Dana-Farber. And this morning, I'm going to be sharing with you a recipe demo for muffin tin frittatas. I know a lot of you may have received the recipe in advance this week. So if you are cooking along this morning, the first thing that we want to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees. If you have your muffin tin ready, I actually sprayed mine with an olive oil spray already, or if you have a nonstick pan, you might not need to do that. And then kind of have all of your other ingredients arranged. I already cracked our 9 eggs into a bowl. And I will say, if you're making it along, something that is helpful when you are thinking about what to mix your eggs up in, having enough space to have room for your milk to be included in. And ideally, if you have something that has a spout so you can pour from it, it just makes it a little bit less messy getting things into the muffin tin. So we're starting with our eggs cracked. One of the things that I really like about this recipe is it is super customizable. So both in terms of the additional ingredients we can add, but also when we're thinking about some of the mix-ins. So there is milk in the ingredient list, but depending on your food allergies and sensitivities, you can really use any unsweetened dairy or non-dairy product here. So I'm going to be using the 1% or skim milk mixed in with the eggs. So you're going to pour that in next. And just as an overview of the recipe, another really nice option about these muffin tin frittatas, or kind of an egg bake essentially, is they're really versatile. So this is something that could be included as a breakfast. It could be a quick and easy snack. It could also be an addition as a protein source at a meal. When we think about this idea of kind of building balanced foods or snacks within our diet, a lot of times as a dietitian, we're thinking about ways to make sure there's protein. So in this meal or snack specifically, that's going to be coming from your cheese, your milk, and your eggs. And we oftentimes also think about these really colorful fruits and vegetables as a source of fiber. Fiber, protein, and healthy fats within the diet are things that help us feel more full and satisfied. So they're really good building blocks for building meals and snacks. So we're going to start by mixing together our milk and our eggs. You can use a whisk. If you don't have a whisk, you can use a fork. And then we're also going to include at the same time our salt and pepper, which I have measured out here. So we're going to whisk those in at the same time. In the recipe that you received, there's both the kind of standard ingredient list using things like the dill, the kale, the cherry tomatoes, scallions, and crumbled feta. But I also listed some other variations to consider, and I'm going to show you 2 different options this morning. As I mentioned about this being super customizable, one of the reasons I really like this is, especially if you live in a household with others who maybe have different food preferences than yourself, it's really nice to be able to mix and match different ingredients. If you have children, you can let them get involved with adding different things into their own muffin tin cups. Or even if you're just someone who's preparing meals and snacks for the week, but find you get burnt out on the repetition of the same thing meal after meal or snack after snack, you can utilize the rows of the muffin tin to add some variations. So now that we have our eggs, milk, and any spices that you're using mixed in, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually pour our muffin mixture into the cups. The reason for that is if we add the ingredients in first, what tends to happen is they end up in kind of a clump in the middle of your muffin. Whereas if we add the egg mixture in first, it helps those kind of disperse a little more evenly. And it's also a lot easier to tell that you're getting an even amount. This is also not super precise. You don't necessarily have to measure the amount in each cup. You just want to kind of start with probably a little bit under half, just to make sure you're getting even amounts for all. And then kind of keep an eye as you go, and you can always go back and add more or adjust a little bit if you need to. The other nice thing about this recipe is you can always scale it up or down. So you could certainly cut it in half to make 6. If you still have a 12-cup muffin tin to help things cook evenly in the oven. You can always fill any unfilled muffin tins with water just to help the heat disperse evenly across the pan. So we've almost got all of these filled. I may have measured slightly off, so I'm going to end up with one that is empty, but that's okay. We can just adjust, and I'll end up filling that extra one with water. So in the last session, you heard a little bit about this idea of incorporating more fruits and vegetables into the diet. So as a dietitian, one of the reasons we think about these colorful fruits, vegetables, and produce is they're rich in what we call phytonutrients. Phyto is the Greek word for plants. Nutrient is kind of those rich compounds that are present in fruits and vegetables and other plant foods. So one of the really exciting things as you're maybe thinking about what fruits and vegetables you enjoy or may want to incorporate, part of how fruits and vegetables express or show these nutrients that they have is actually through their rich colors and taste. So, you know, as you're thinking about things that you may want to incorporate into a recipe like this, actually thinking about a variety of colors is a great way to help balance those nutrients. So the first one that I'm going to do is actually a recipe that you have listed, which is going to be the cherry tomatoes. So you're getting some nice rich reds. And usually this, again, is not super precise. You're going to want to just, I usually use either a half tablespoon or a tablespoon to just divide the ingredients across however many muffin tins you want to use those ingredients in. So I'm going to start filling half with our cherry tomatoes. And then we also have dill. So I'm going to sprinkle that in next. And those I'm actually just going to use my hands. I chopped that up. Again, if there's any ingredients in any of these combinations that you don't care for, the good news is when we're thinking about variety of fruits and vegetables, across that same color palette, you're getting a lot of the same rich nutrients. So for example, if you don't care for dill, but you really enjoy parsley, or you really enjoy basil, you could always swap and mix and match based on your food preferences or also what you have on hand. This recipe includes kale, which is also going to be in that green family. So I'm going to add a little pinch of that to each of these. And again, if kale is not your favorite vegetable or green, you could certainly swap for spinach. And that's really the exciting thing, in my opinion, when you think about some of the versatility here is, if there's something that you don't enjoy in terms of a specific fruit and vegetable, there's lots of ways to find across different color palettes things that you do enjoy. And it doesn't have to be about forcing things that aren't things that you like. So for these, I'm going to finish off with just a little bit of a sprinkle of feta for some extra protein and flavor on the top of each one. And then the other flavor combination that I put together today, we're going to do sun-dried tomatoes, broccoli. I know Dr. Apovian mentioned briefly cruciferous vegetables. So broccoli, cauliflower, those fall in that cruciferous vegetable family. And then I forgot to sprinkle in our other ones. We also have some garlic, and I didn't have the chives. So instead, we're going to actually use a little bit of purple onion. So you'll hear two more colors in that palette. We've got both the purples as well as sometimes the whites I feel like are underrepresented, but garlic, onions, shallot, leeks, all of those are also very rich in these nutritional properties. So for these last couple, I'm going to scoop in a little bit of sun-dried tomato, broccoli. I steamed it from fresh, but you could also, for any of these ingredients, use canned. You could use frozen. There's a lot of flexibility, again, across using fruits and vegetables in the diet. Sometimes we get asked as dietitians, like, should things be cooked or raw? And the answer is actually both. There's different nutrient properties that are enhanced when certain fruits and vegetables are eaten raw versus when they're eaten cold. So raw or cooked, excuse me. So using a combination of foods in both of those variations helps you get the fullest nutritional benefit. So for these last ones, I'm going to finish them off after the broccoli with just a little bit of a sprinkle of Parmesan cheese. Again, you could always substitute Omit the cheese if you have any food allergies or preferences, mix and match. I didn't have basil on hand, but that's a nice addition to the sun-dried tomato. Pestos, salsas, there's lots of ways to mix and match ingredients. What I also like is they're very versatile in terms of helping use leftovers in the fridge. If you roasted the potatoes, sweet potato, squash, you have leftover vegetables, you can chop up really anything that you have on hand and utilize that in these tins. So you'll notice now we've got our muffin tins that are nice and full. So at that point, then they're ready to go into the oven, and usually they're going to take about 20 to 23 minutes. You just want to watch for the egg to be set, not really runny or moving at all. And then from here, at this point, you can eat them out of the fridge, reheated or fresh within 2 to 3 days. But the other great thing about these is they freeze really well. So you can also freeze them up to a month. Usually I recommend if you're going to, say, defrost it for breakfast the next morning, you would just put it in the fridge the night before, and then you can reheat it as you would from fresh. And then from that perspective, once they come out of the oven, usually I just let them cool a little bit, and then you could either use a knife or a fork to help scoop those out. If you didn't have a muffin tin, you could also do it as like a full egg bake and do that in a muffin, instead of a muffin tin, like a Pyrex pan, a pie plate, and do it in a larger serving as well. And that would work equally well. So that kind of takes us to the end of the recipe demo itself. But then I just wanted to open it up to see if there were any questions that came through from the group, or just see if there's any questions about the recipe or just in general phytonutrients or fruits and vegetables.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hannah.
Of course.
We lost your live feed. We're looking at a photo of you now. Can you come back on?
Yes, let me see why that is. Is that better?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Wonderful. So thank you so much for all those tips. We have one question that just came in. What is the current info on egg whites versus egg in our diet?
Yes. So I think historically part of the reason whole eggs have gotten a little bit of a bad reputation is the idea that because the yolk in particular is high in dietary cholesterol, that there could be some impact on raising someone's blood cholesterol level. But what we do find is that it's more sources of high fat foods in the diet, particularly saturated fat, things like high fat dairy, sweets, things with those more processed forms of fat that have a more direct impact on our cholesterol levels than actually foods that are high in cholesterol. So from my perspective, there really is no harm in doing the full egg. It's still a really excellent source of lean protein within the diet, easy to prepare. Certainly if you prefer the egg white, there's also no harm in doing that, but there are also some rich nutrients like choline that are present in the yolk. So also if you're trying to kind of split the difference, you could always do, a handful of full eggs and then some yolks if you wanted to do a combination in a dish like this, but it's also perfectly fine to utilize the whole egg.
Wonderful. One other question. What are your thoughts on plant-based cheese? Is this good for us?
So a lot of the plant-based products, it comes down to kind of what is in some of them. Some of them do use more processed forms of soy and some other more heavily processed ingredients. So the kind of short answer is it depends on what it is and what it's made from. I also think there can certainly, even in observing a broadly lower fat diet, there certainly can be options to include regular cheeses in moderation, depending on what they're balanced alongside. And I think the other factor is, if it's because of following a vegan or vegetarian diet where there's other food preferences, I think those types of substitutes can certainly safely be used. And if there's food allergies, such as lactose intolerance, there's also, some of the harder cheeses are much lower in lactose content, like the Parmesan, your Swiss, your cheddar. So sometimes, again, those foods can be safely used in moderation. But I would say it kind of depends on what the plant-based option is derived from.
Wonderful, thank you. And while we still have Dr. Apovian, I would like to come back to her for a couple of questions that have come into the chat. Dr. Apovian, there was one question about will a tummy tuck reduce your risk of breast cancer? That reduces how much fat a woman is carrying. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, we can.
Great. That is such a great question, and it was shown, actually. We didn't know whether or not it could help. So Sam Klein, about 5 years ago or so now, did a study and it wasn't a tummy tuck, it was actually liposuction, which does the same thing, right? It sucks fat out of the deleterious part, really, of the area that causes high risk of inflammation. And he found that even though women lost 20 pounds after the liposuction, on average, there was no change, zero change in inflammation, zero change in blood glucose, blood pressure, all of the metabolic deleterious aspects of fat tissue. So the conclusion was that just taking it off, by taking the fat off mechanically, will not work. You have to actually do the metabolic change by weight loss. That's a great, great question.
Great, and then
but
maybe
it doesn't work.
Well, one more quick question for you. Our audience would like to know if there's a test that can be done to find out if they are predisposed to the genetic inflammation of fat that you were discussing.
Oh my goodness, that's another great question. So we're studying that. There isn't a definitive test right now. We do measure, sometimes we measure what's called the C-reactive protein, or CRP, in the blood. However, that test can be altered by, if you have a cold or not. So it's not such a great test, and it's not that predictive. So right now, we don't have a dietary test or a metabolic test to check inflammation. It's really just all of the other surrogate markers for inflammation. So blood pressure, elevated blood glucose, and that's what we measure. And it's a good chance that if you have high blood pressure, if you have a tendency to a high blood glucose, or if there's a family history of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, that your risk of gaining weight and getting inflammation is also very high.